my estimate is that on average, if you employ some of these combination of these methodologies, you're able to move up your, what I would start with D30. I think you can move that up 10 to 15%.
Whoa.
Which goes from okay on my list of like 20% D30, that's like okay, that's good, to whopping 35%, that's exceptional.
We are seeing in this wave of AI a lot of questions around retention. And I think something that you've pointed out is that, maybe things aren't so different from the last wave of consumer applications, or at least that we can learn from them, right? And so you're an expert in this. What have you seen in terms of the past retention mechanisms that you feel like in consumer wave 1 can now be maybe applied to consumer wave 2?
Yeah, this is a fun one, very fun topic, and it actually came from one of my chats with an AI native founder who was trying to find ways to say, how do I get my product into more consumers' hands? It's interesting because I've said it once before that retention is the bread and butter of key consumer products, because if you don't get users coming back and again, ultimately you have what I call this like burned forest problem where you went and cut all the trees off and there's no more new acquisition to do.
Yeah.
So ultimately, retention is incredibly important. And it tended to be this metrics that is very difficult to move. Mm-hmm. And I remember this because I ran gross product at Snap. And when we moved, when I tell you 1%, 100 bips, 1% of a retention rate of a D30 that we're tracking, we moved it up by 1%. There was a huge party. That actually led to a very clear incremental value to the company in terms of the daily active users that we're going to keep and the reduction in any paid ads that we would have to do. And it was very, very clear benefit. So that ingrained in me, oh my God, this number is very, very difficult to move. Nowadays, because of these methods that are available to consumer founders, my estimate is that on average, if you employ some of these combination of these methodologies, you're able to move up your, what I would start with D30. I think you can move that up 10 to 15%.
Whoa.
Which goes from okay on my list of like 20% D30, that's like okay, that's good, to whopping 35%, that's exceptional.
Yes, yeah.
So what I've learned in the past two and a half years, meeting with excellent founders who are on the front line, thinking about different product mechanisms, there have been 7 ways that I've seen that very distinctively you can employ to move your retention up. And what's more, which is really exciting, is that I've thought about ways that the new AI native products are actually adopting these. And they are already seeing the benefits. And the said founder that I'm talking about had actually told me that, after that chat, I employed a bunch of mechanisms and actually my weekly retention shot up by a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's all the validation I need to publish this.
Amazing. Well, let's go through them. So you said you've got 7 mechanisms. And as you said, we're kind of seeing examples from the past, from the earlier traditional consumer wave. And then you're already seeing implementation, which is kind of crazy because we're so early into this new wave. So let's start with the first one, speed to core product value. What do you mean by that?
Retention is made up of 2 things in my mind. Onboarding matters. If the new user comes on day 0 and didn't find a value that they're looking for, they're not going to stay. Mm-hmm. And you just lost that user. And it's very, very unlikely that you recover from a low D0, D1 retention. It's very difficult to recover from that. So onboarding really matters. And then, making sure that as you onboard someone, getting them to experience that core product value that you're delivering quickly matters a ton. Because the less friction, less time lapse you have between opening or starting the product, the better chance you have to retaining them. If you just look at traditional companies, or traditional is the wrong word, but sure. Leading companies, Google, when it first started, and Larry Page was very famous for really, really hammering this down, where speed of search, shaving milliseconds to search result really mattered. And that really mattered in terms of drop rate, that really mattered in terms of people sticking around and coming back and working on the product. And sort of that became one of the mantra enough that they started building it into their search ranking. How fast the site loads became a factor in relevance. Because
I think
it's
they
relevant
were even
that
surprised at how much this impacted things,
exactly,
right?
And they wrote this blog that said speed matters. As they think about the AI products, it's interesting because we talk a lot about the improvements in underlying foundational model and what that means. What that means is that the results come to you faster, better, more relevant. And there's an example of a AI native companionship product where they actually did this test where they used GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, and they actually tracked the cohort of user retention using each of the models. And it's very clear as the model quality improved, which means you get response faster. The retention out to 90th day of user being activated kept on improving. And one of the other sort of ways I think about this, and this is kudos to Arvind at Perplexity, is that whenever the state-of-the-art model comes out, he incorporates that into Perplexity on the day of, if not earlier. And, I was thinking about this. I'm like, oh, that's like incredible velocity and that's great. But I actually think what it also does, it makes this product perform much better than anything out there and delivers faster, better, more relevant results. And I think that's part of how the speed to core product value is manifesting in these different type of AI native products.
I love that they can see the difference between, as you said, GPT-1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go to the next one, feature-gated onboarding. What do you mean by that?
So as I said, onboarding matters a lot. Now, you can have an onboarding where you gently nudge people like, this is how you use the product, have fun. Or you can actually really force feed them. And I think what we're seeing is that if you actually gate the usage of the product behind something that users need to do to unlock, I think that actually ends up leading to higher retention. You're exchanging lower conversion to actual product initiation, if you will, because some people will not be willing to go through that onboarding process. The thought process there is that they probably weren't going to stick around anyways. So you're actually like finding out early that they're not willing to do that. But if they do go through it, you actually see a much higher retention for people who are activated. So the example from prior non-AI generation would be the company called Laps. It's a camera app that gives you the feel of the instant camera, if you will. And what's interesting is it's essentially a social product.
Yep.
And what they actually gated the product usage behind is not only a pretty lengthy onboarding process of how the product works, but also you can't use it unless you invited 5 new friends. Now, what does that do? It's famous for social products where if you have more than 5 friends on the product, your chance of sticking around is much, much higher. So what this product is doing is actually force building a friend graph that when you come onto the product, you already have value that you're going to find by looking at your friend's content, 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5 out of 5. So I think that's like a way of building in retention as you go in. I think one of the more recent AI examples would be Viggle.ai. Okay. This is a fun product where you get to put a picture of yourself and all you need is an image. And they have certain set of scenes. And one of the more famous scenes was Lil Yachty dancing out in stage. And you can very easily overlay anybody's image on it. There have been very different, viral moments of Jerome Powell doing a dance after announcing a rate cut. and those type of examples are so fun. Now, how do you create these? It's magical, right? You layer on your image. Like I actually put on my image on one of the famous Guardians of the Galaxy scene where Chris sings Ooh Child in front of his nemesis.
Ooh, child, things will get brighter. Then bring it down hard.
It's one of my favorite scenes. It's so funny. Now, what Viggle does is it's only available on Discord to create. There are 3 steps you need to go through to be able to create a Viggle. That includes reading the rules. That also involves actually going through the mechanics of how to build the right sequence in the Discord chat so that you can get that result. And only then, after completing those steps, can you use the product.
Yeah.
Now, what does that do? Well, that effectively taught you how to create this forcefully to some extent. And now you have created it. Voila, the magical moment happened.
Right.
And now your propensity to come back to the product is a lot higher because it's not foreign to you anymore. And I think that's a very interesting use case of actually putting your core product creation behind sort of a fairly long rules and understanding how to use a product and actually getting them to create an example.
A good one, too. A good example because they've been trained.
Exactly. So it's been a very interesting thing to watch. And I think more and more companies with somewhat of a niche or specific creation flow would benefit from.
Yeah, I also like the frame of maybe how can you create a product that is so good that people are willing to sit through the friction, right? So the next one, designing reciprocity.
So here, this is one of my favorite ones because this actually underpins probably the highest retention gain that you could get. And this is also one of the things that I don't have an AI example yet. The idea is give to get, i.e. if you have a product and you haven't contributed to the product, you don't get it. The example really would be Be Real, which is a social product where you can check up on your friends' authentic moments. And it's a fair value exchange. Hey, you don't get to see your friend's authentic moment until you're willing to share yours. And I think that's a powerful concept. And the reciprocity is very effective because what it does is now as a user, I have to create, I have to contribute, to consume. The other interesting thing is if I get any sort of reaction or positive reinforcement of people liking that content, whether it's a like button or a comment button, what have you, I get a jolt of joy or dopamine. And I'm more willing to do that on an ongoing basis, which leads to higher retention, which leads to richer content on the platform, and so on and so forth. I think this can actually translate really well into certain AI products where it becomes important for the product to have a rich creation flow. I think we're trained to go to a platform hoping to see sea of content, feed, what have you. But what if you gated that behind creation? What if people needed to create and actually contribute to the dynamicness of that product before consuming? It won't work for every single product, but I think you can design it into different AI products where creation and the sort of maintaining a dynamic creation consumption flow within the product can really, really be helpful.
Yeah, I know. You've got my wheels spinning. And maybe it's partially because creators get so much value from these AI tools that they don't actually need to consume as much as in the prior era. But looking forward, the next one is building smart notifications.
Notification is this one thing where it's tried and true. People know that notification can bring people back. It's a double-edged knife, double-edged sword, and that you send too much, people turn it off, you are not getting them back. I know this empirically that once you turn a notification off, the chance of something turning that back on is extremely low. Now, what's interesting on notification is this. When you think of notification, I think there are three different things to think about, which is who's sending it? Of course, the company is sending it, but who is the perceived sender to the user? That's one. Two is what is in the message? What is the payload? And then three is what is the frequency? And all three of these interact differently. But I'll give you one example where, let's say, Snapchat sends Happy Earth Day message. Well, don't paint me into villain, but I don't actually care much about Earth Day. I don't care. Why are you telling me this? And in that case, the payload is Happy Earth Day. The frequency was this holiday, if you will. And the sender, in this case, is a company.
Yep.
Not my friend, because if you snap me and I get a little, purple or blue square, I'm not thinking, oh, Snap is sending me another notification. I'm thinking, Steph wants to talk to me. This is great. So the perceived sender is very different. Another example would be Partiful. If you think you're going to an event and you signed up for it, you RSVP'd, and you get a notification that the venue changed last minute, or it's raining and they're changing the time, or so-and-so is not going. You want to know that, and you get a notification on your SMS that says, guys, instead of 8, we're going to 7. Instead of Crown's King, we're going to some other bar. That's really relevant, and the sender is not Partiful. The sender is the host.
Right, yes.
So that's really interesting because the more you can move the user's mindset into, oh, this is really useful to me. Oh, the perceived sender isn't necessarily the company. This is actually really useful to me. That's sort of how you shift the mindset and therefore make it a lot less likely for someone to turn off. If you turn on notification on Perplexity, it actually delivers you very relevant news that you might care about. So during the OpenAI, reshuffle or saga, a lot of different movements happened. And when you're able to get that news pushed to you really relevantly quickly, you no longer think, oh, why is this product bothering me with notification? I can't believe that just happened. I am so glad I learned it before I learned it on TikTok or Twitter.
Yeah.
or news. And I think that's sort of a way to build very smart notification that a lot of AI products can actually build in.
What is your take on giving consumers the ability to customize their notifications? As in, is it generally best practice to design your own notifications and, send those out as you see fit and also iterate? Or there are some products that will let you say, you know what, I only want notifications if I'm tagged here. Or, maybe I want everything in this kind of community.
I think overall, most products won't need to actually go to the granular detail of what you want notification for. But of course, let's think about the commerce company or social products. The commerce company, do you want to notify when I have random sales? Do you want to notify new products? Do you want to get notified for returns or relevant to your order?
Right.
Well, I just my orders, please, Maybe that's the relevant way to think about it. Social products, same thing as you said. It depends how you're using it, right? Like Instagram, I want to be notified if someone comment on it. If I want to be notified if I have new friends, etc. But that type of granular detail initially for AI products, I think, is probably less relevant at this moment.
Yep.
And really probably think more about how do I actually deliver value through this notification? So one, interesting that you asked, so let's actually use the example of character. Character AI has a notification toggle button where do you want to be notified by your companion? What does that even mean?
I was just trying to process
Right?
that.
What that means is that it's a two-way dialogue actually, but it's a bot or companion that is governed by LLM. What does it mean for that to reach out to me first?
That's so interesting.
So
it's a friend.
It's a friend, right? So it's like a very interesting emotional nudge of do you think of this being as truly your friend? In which case you would want to hear from them
Yes.
First and proactively. Versus do you want to engage on your own terms or you want to engage with the sort of communication with a digital being? So those are the types of notification where I do think it's very nuanced and fun and impactful.
That is so interesting. You're basically coding boundaries in a way.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, next one, keeping streaks alive.
Streaks. This is a well-known example. One pet peeve I have on streaks, though, is that people think of it as, gamification. I understand streaks. Let's put a fire emoji and a number next to it, and it'll be great. It's the well-done streaks are a little different. They're very, very effortful.
What do you mean by that?
Let's say you and I have a streak of 1,000. What that meant on Snapchat is I sent you a video, not a text, not a chat, a video, a snap, or image or video, and you sent me back something in a 24-hour period as well. And streak doesn't appear until 3 days of doing that. The fact that there's a fire emoji and 1,000 next to it is that we did that nonstop for nearly 3 years. That is not a like button. That is not a retweet. That is not a heart. That is really, really expensive friendship badge. And you bet if you break that, I'm not talking to you. So there are ways to think about these streaks as something that is very meaningful, that is not just some number behind it. And this is a way to actually really encourage people to keep coming back to your product. One good example that I think about is there's a lot of AI journal products like Rosebud or JOT, and it actually has streak mechanism, and that's helpful. And another language learning app called Speak AI. And it's similar to Duolingo, but it's a language learning based on AI. These products are very beneficial when they're habituated. Writing journals is proven to be a good thing for your mental health.
Yep.
Language learning, we know that consistency matters.
Yep.
So when you bake into these type of products, even if it's AI native product, if it's habituated, helpful to the users to be habituated, I think these are the very, very interesting places to start seeing it. And bonus points if founders can start thinking about streaks as digital signature or display of something effortful and expensive, not a like button, not a retweet button, which I tend to think of as cheaper digital signs.
Yeah. I mean, I almost think it's identity-based in a way. There are some people, by the way, you can look this up, who have been doing the Duolingo streak for like a decade. And so for those people, there has to be an identity piece of that where they're like, yes, it is trying to keep up the streak, but it's also like, I'm a language learner, or I'm dedicated, or as you said, I'm a good friend.
I'm a good friend.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he or she is a good friend of mine.
Yeah, exactly.
That is unbreakable.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, we've got two more. The next one is the raps.
This is fun. Raps popularized by Spotify year-end rap. My number one musician is Hans Zimmer. And I was proud of that. I shared,
You've got one you can share. Mine are all embarrassing.
I've shared that out quite widely. Raps is interesting because we know AI or LLMs are good for a few things, and they also include summarization. They're very good for that. Mm-hmm. So I think what we're seeing now is this unique technology that can actually sift through your behavior, your engagement, what you consume, et cetera, and be able to tease out summarization.
Yeah.
Excellent for that. And so I think we're starting to see very interesting behavior because if I know if I'm going to have a rap, like I'm excited, I'm going to continue to do whatever that thing is or whatever that product is so that I have a pretty cool summary. Or that summarization really benefits me. And you know, I think back to the old example when I got my first American Express card. Year end, they sent like a 20-page document of like what you did, like all the spending that you did. That was not good. That was not helpful. But hey, in the era of LLM, we have companies like Oops Finance, where you're able to actually tease out the themes of what's happening. You could very easily say, hey, like you've been eating out a lot.
Yeah.
You've been spending on a lot of entertainment. You spend on a lot of trips, or you should probably do X, Y, Z. We want to invest more, we want to save more. So I think this is one of the other methodologies that I can very easily see being useful to a lot of new AI native products.
Totally. And I think about the equivalent in Spotify, they'll tell you, right? Like if you're a Hans Zimmer, like top 1% fan, you feel really good about that.
We need Hans Zimmer B-roll here.
Yeah. But also you can imagine the same thing like for finance, right? You're in the top, 5% of savers.
Yeah.
You're the top 10% who buys from this brand. Like there's some cool stuff you can do.
How fun would that be?
With that.
And we're already seeing that in products. Like there was a product called Airbuds, and they sort of use the technology to figure out you're the top 1% listener of Taylor Swift. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're sharing that.
Yeah, totally. And I guess like as you're saying, AI actually helps us enable that because we no longer need the Spotify data set.
Exactly.
Right? That's really interesting. The final one is status for power users.
I know we talk about retention as sort of a broad base, overall user base, thing. But, if you actually go pretty granular, there usually is this like bulwark or like extremely healthy users in any given leading product. Mm-hmm. Power users. And I'll just give you one example. Let's say MAU, monthly active user. Whether someone showed up every single day of 30-day period or showed up once, they're both one MAU. Mm-hmm. But surely one is far more valuable than the other.
Yeah.
And so you start thinking through, how do I actually think about power users? How do I really build that? And this is interesting and this is helpful to build retention because by giving people and bestowing some kind of status, if you will, for power users, the more likely you're able to incent them to continue that status. Mm-hmm. So old school examples, again, one way to do that on Reddit type of the world is to be a moderator. That's an honor. For that community, for the subreddit, it's an honor. Mm-hmm. Strava's local legend. That's an honor. You bet your ass, like they would want to stay there.
Yep.
And that's very important. And I think we're already seeing very cool AI examples as well. One of the companies that sort of focuses on fine-tuned image models and acting as a hub for that, there's a company called Civet AI. It's important for them to have a large, density of fine-tuned image models. Mm-hmm. And so how do you actually, engender that? How do you actually get creators of these models to want to come back and do more? Is to start bestowing them status and leaderboards. Yeah. And I think we are seeing that type of activity really continue to encourage the power users to keep coming back and keep contributing to the platform, therefore making it healthy. Another funny example, there's a product called Readwise where it sort of shows how many books and how many sort of passages you read. And being on top of that list or being a top X% user on those tend to be a really important, almost as you said, identity for me.
Yeah.
And I think those are very interesting ways to keep people from coming back to the product. There's a famous article, Status as a Service, that was written by Eugene Wei, where he says, like, people are status seeking monkeys. And to some extent, that's true. And I think, a lot of the AI products, especially where creativity and contribution matters a lot, it's a very unique thing to be able to bestow and share with their most excited user base.
Yeah, I mean, if you use many of these examples, like the Strava local legends, they would rather be up there than be paid to do the things that they're doing. And I think maybe if there's one key takeaway here is as I look down your list of 7 different mechanisms, they're all free. You need the cycles to actually implement this, but this is not something that is rocket science either, and it's not something that you need a huge budget to implement. Like, these are really things that you can bake into almost any product. And hopefully we'll get an example of, it was designing Reciprocity, right?
Reciprocity example. I'm excited to see one too. And, I think, as you said, these are not expensive mechanisms, but I think what's interesting is, like, you get to pick what actually really boosts the attractiveness of your core product value and really serve that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Cool.
Amazing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. As a reminder, the content here is for informational purposes only. Should not be taken as legal, business, tax, or investment advice, or be used to evaluate any investment or security, and is not directed at any investors or potential investors in any A16Z fund. Please note that A16Z and its affiliates may also maintain investments in the companies discussed in this podcast. For more details, including a link to our investments, please see a16z.com/disclosures.